American Indian contributions. Beekeeping. Beekeeping in history. Beekeeping is one of the oldest recorded means of food production. But do you know what's more interesting? The first beekeepers of the world weren't keepers at all. They were instead foragers of wild honey. The Cueva de la Arna caves near Valencia, Spain, bears the earliest beekeeping evidence. It houses a Mesolithic rock painting dating to 9000 BCE. The cave painting depicts a human figure climbing a tree to gather honey from a beehive. The scene in the picture has a few bees fluttering around the figure. Beekeeping in history. The practice of domesticated beekeeping developed in ancient Egypt around 2500 BCE. Roman writers like Virgil, Columella, Varro, and Gaius Julius Heinus discuss this concept. In his book Historia Animalium, Aristotle also mentioned beekeeping and bees' behavior. Around 500 BCE, the Chinese philosopher and statesman Fan Li drafted his treatise, Golden Rules of Business Success. Here he touched upon the benefits of a wooden hive box. In the earliest days, the beekeepers crafted beehives out of hollowed out stumps of trees and fallen logs where honeybees would naturally swarm and build their colonies. To harvest the honey, the caretaker would clear out the hive of bees and burn it. They then squeezed the honeycombs to extract the golden syrup. A. mellifera, the European breed of the honeybee, is the most common domesticated type. The only domestic variant is A. serrana, known as the Asiatic or Eastern honeybee. It's a species of small honeybees found in Asia's southeastern and southern parts. American Indian contributions. Beekeeping. People who care for honey-producing insects in human-made hives in order to harvest honey are called beekeepers or apiarists. Indigenous people throughout North Meso and South America gathered wild honey to use as a sweetener, but the Maya have the distinction of being the first beekeepers in the Americas. Maya culture arose in what is now southern New Mexico and in parts of Mesoamerica in about 1500 BC. Initially, the Maya took honey from the wild bee colonies and then cut tree trunks containing wild hives, relocating these under the eaves of their houses, where they cared for them until the honey was harvested. The bees that raised they raised, Apis mellifoni, did not have the ability to sting. The Maya called them Zuankab, Kolaukab, or Fulkab. After closely studying the insects, the beekeepers learned what types of plants help their bees produce the best honey and how to better protect the bee colonies. In time, they learned to increase honey production by building special huts to shelter the hives. Each hut or apiary contained about 100 to 200 hive logs. Maya beekeepers then began to breed many varieties of native honey-producing stingless bees. American Indian contributions. Beekeeping. The Madrid Codex, one of 4 surviving Maya books that were written prior to Spanish conquest, discusses beekeeping and its importance. The Maya used the honey harvested to sweeten cornmeal drinks and for a ceremonial fermented drink called blache that included honey, herbs, and water. Maya beekeepers were required to pay government tributes in honey. Both honey and beeswax were traded with the Aztec and other culture groups. The beekeeping technology that the Maya devised was just as sophisticated as that used in Europe until the 1700s. According to Gonzalo Fernandez de Oviedo, who wrote the General Natural History of the Indies published in 1535, Maya beekeeping was much more extensive than that taking place in Europe. Early Europeans in the Yucatan described bee yards containing thousands of hives. This picture was coordinated by archaeologist Raquel Liliana Hernandez Estrada. The team recovered 3 Jobon caps, artifacts associated with traditional Mayan beekeeping, along with other cultural materials across Bacalar in Felipe Cabrillo Puerto, said a news release from INAH. The Joban caps, also known as panuchos, were round limestone lids measuring around 7 inches and are believed to date back to the post-classic period. These caps were typically used to cover beehives of the native Melipona beechi species. American Indian contributions beekeeping. Soon after their arrival, the Spaniards tried to stop local honey production in order to ensure that sugar from their newly established sugarcane plantations would be the sweetener of choice. Under these circumstances, production might have ended altogether were it not for the Catholic churches requiring more beeswax for its candles than Spain could provide. As a result, the colonial government in the Yucatan Peninsula of what is now Mexico began encouraging bee culture and demanded beeswax tributes as well as honey from the Maya. In 1549, the first year such a tribute was levied, about 95% of the towns in the Yucatan Peninsula paid the Spanish colonial government a total of 1,293 pounds, or more than 26 pounds for every 20 people, of honey and 64,753 pounds of beeswax. European bees were not introduced to the New World until they were in Florida in the late 1600s. These beekeeping experiments were a failure. In 1764, the Spaniards tried beekeeping again, this time in Cuba. Shortly afterward, bees of European origin made their way to Mexico. However, by 1821, they had not yet become established in the Yucatan, where traditional beekeepers who continued to produce wax undoubtedly preferred to work with stingless bees. Not until the end of the 1800s was the European bee finally introduced to the area. American gods. Ab-Muzen-Cap. The Maya god of bees and honey, he is possibly the same figure as the descending god or the divining god, and is consistently depicted upside down. The temple of descending gods is located in Tulum. The bees used by the Maya are Melipona beechi and the Melipona yucatanica, species of stingless bee. Amazon-Cap is a Melipona bee. The deity is the creator of the earth and universe in the fourth and final cycle of the cosmos, according to the Maya peoples of the Yucatan Peninsula. Ambuzan-Cab is the protector of the Mbichi and goes to the underworld to free trapped life forces. The bee god also unifies Auk-Chikna and Uktas-Cab. What came first, the bee or the stinger? Bees that couldn't sting came first. Here's why. Evolutionarily, bees evolved from the wasp-like ancestors. These ancestors had ovipositories, egg-laying tubes used by females. Over time, in some lineages, including ancestors of modern bees, the ovipositor evolved into a stinger used for defense. What this means. Early bees were non-stinging because their ovipositors were used mainly for laying eggs and not for defense. The ability to sting developed later as some bees adapted to defend their nests in social colonies. Therefore, non-stinging bee ancestors existed before stinging bees. Stingers are a derived evolutionary feature, not an original one. Did you know that not all bees make honey? Honeybees get all the fame for their sweet creations, but out of more than 20,000 bee species in the world, only a small group actually produces honey. Many bees like bumblebees, carpenter bees, and leafcutter bees are important pollinators, but don't store large amounts of honey because they don't live in a big, long-lasting colony like honeybees do. So while honeybees keep the pantry stocked, the rest of the bee world stays busy helping plants grow and keeping ecosystems healthy.